And so I ate some mushrooms and just kind of hung out by the fire. Eventually, like, got into my tent and was just kind of laying there, and they're kicking in. And at some point, I felt my body or my mind, my soul, whatever, just raise up above, maybe like a few 100 feet above where I was.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Wild Dispatch. I'm Robin and I'm back with more skills and stories from the wild. Now, first of all, I must say, please excuse my voice. I sound a little bit rough today. I think I'm getting a bit of a cold. Probably been running around a bit too much in preparation before going to South Africa. But this episode is not about South Africa. It is set in NorCal, with our local hunting mushroom legend, William Arthur Sprague IV. This time we are going deep into the Mushroomverse. We are, well, first of all going to be reflecting on the season so far. We've done a bit of hunting together, which was great fun. But then we are going to be rolling up our sleeves and talking all about psychedelic mushrooms, more specifically psilocybin. So this is the first of a couple of episodes. So if you're new, then be sure to follow the show and you can see when the next one hits in a few weeks' time. I should also actually say there are quite a few mycelium-oriented episodes on the radar, so stay tuned. If you are a regular visitor, then please take a moment to do all the things that people who regularly visit podcasts do. If you could give us a follow, leave a nice review, and definitely share it with a mycelium-minded friend. I've said it before, I'll say it again, the more people who know about this podcast, the bigger the network gets, and that expands the potential number of guests who can jump on the show, so everybody wins. Once again, a big thank you to William for coming over to my house and sharing his knowledge and stories, and actually for sharing some of his music as well, which is absolutely perfect for this episode. The moment that he said to me that he likes to make music, to take mushrooms, to make music to, blew my mind. I thought, okay, this is something we need to talk about. Anyway, it's time for me to stop waffling. Here's William.
Welcome to the Wild Dispatch.
Hello.
Hey.
How's it going, man?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Ready to get fucked up?
What's that?
This is my ginger brew.
Oh, you've got some already?
Yeah.
Awesome.
It happened pretty quick.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Because you did that like
I just
2
started
days
it.
ago.
I just started it yesterday.
Yeah, you said.
Before we met up. So yeah,
Nice,
man.
man.
Pretty quick. Take off my shoes here. Got some hedgies going.
Got some hedgies.
Or hogs, as the locals call them.
Yeah, man. It was good. This is like probably a pound or two. Went with my friend as well. So yeah, it was not bad. How much weight do you think that is?
Hey, 2.5, 2 and change.
Okay. So maybe the other one was like a pound.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work though.
Hedgies are, hedgies, candies. Yeah, it's a lot of hedgies are probably harder. Because, these will grow sort of in the open.
Yeah.
And
These like it under the
hedgehogs, a lot
huckleberry.
less so, yeah.
You're like
You
deep-
really got to stretch
deep,
for them.
like panic attack style.
Hmm.
You're in no space.
Yeah, I saw a lot today when we were picking yellowfoot, but, I like to just focus on it.
That's these guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was quite a few of them. They're like starting to pop where I was. It's just through there.
Yeah.
Through that little.
They often like the same zone,
Yeah.
the same kind of areas.
This so 2 different spots where I got candy caps.
Yeah.
One is from my garden, and this I think these ones got a bit more like they got wetter. but they don't seem to be. They don't smell. But I'm pretty sure that they are candy caps.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. But it was just weirding me out.
They smell like I'll get a handful so you can get a few different specimens.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, it's like...
But these ones, they're on my garden and seem to be way more pungent.
Definitely. Yeah. Sometimes I think it's like how water saturated they are.
Yeah. I think it must have washed it out a bit.
Yeah, these guys look and feel more dry.
They were in more shade from the rain. I think the other ones were a bit exposed.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
It's still, I'm still seeing people post on candy caps and like, it's not a beginner's mushroom.
Yeah.
It's like you kind of need somebody to like. I mean, you can key it out real easily, but most people don't take the time to do that, to do spore prints, and they actually don't really smell like it at all. Not to my nose.
I find the ones that I have do seem to have a distinctive smell.
It's like you've got a better nose than I do.
Maybe I think I use my nose a lot more in nature for some reason over some of the other stuff.
I think we talked about that once before.
Okay.
Yeah, some people swear they can smell them in the woods and it helps them to
find it.
Yeah, which I'm like, wow, that's great. But to me, I don't get it at all. I just get that latex glove kind of smell, maybe mixed with something else I can't quite, almost like peppery or something that's mixed in there. I don't know. But, yeah.
Got the Christmas tree ready?
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Cherry pick.
Cool. Love it.
Yeah.
Perfect size.
Awesome. I'm excited to try this video.
Yeah.
Are you ready for a pod?
Yeah, man. Sorry I'm so late.
No,
too,
dude,
man.
don't worry.
Oh my god.
I want to hear all about it.
It's been a fucking whirlwind today.
Welcome.
So it should be nice and fizzy. That's a good
what
sign.
were you saying is so this is ginger ale.
It's ginger beer.
Ginger beer, sorry.
Yeah, ginger beer. Can we throw a couple ice cubes in
Yeah,
there?
let me grab.
Are you an ice cube person?
I'm easy.
I'm like, I have to have ice.
Do you like a
cube
big ice
and
cube or
everything.
small?
Yeah, big one's good.
I like big ones too.
I'm not sure if it's like a Midwest Michigan thing or.
Enough,
Yeah, that's good. So yeah, we had the ginger bug made, which is just like, I put ginger in a food processor, add some sugar and some water to it.
Okay.
And it's not really fermentation because no alcohol happens, but there's like enzymes or something in the ginger that starts eating the sugar, and it breaks the sugar down. Yeah. So you're not eating, because there's a bit of sugar in the big batch, but the sugar gets eaten. Yeah. And so it's not like the same as drinking like a soda pop or something like that.
But it's fizzing like champagne.
Yeah, it really is.
Wow.
And, this took literally a day to make. So in a big pot, I do a bunch of ginger, and I just eyeball everything at this point.
Yeah.
I do a bunch of ginger, sugar, and that conch, and then also like all the citruses that I told you, and
what were the citruses again?
grapefruit, lemon, lime, and I also did pomegranate. The pomegranate's the thing that's kind of like making it kind of...
Smells so good. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Hopefully it's good.
Oh, that is so good.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Whoa. Part of me wants it to be a little bit sweeter, but actually it's pretty good.
I'm a bit of a sweet tooth, but I also love it when there's less sweetness.
Yeah, you get it sort of at the end, but very refreshing.
It's delicious.
I can pick up on the grapefruit and lemon and lime, but I'm not really getting the pomegranate so much. But the pomegranate's what's giving it that pink color.
Yeah.
It was a little bit more so as it was like doing its thing. So yeah, man, this was like literally, I did this in, 30 hours.
Amazing.
and kombucha and all that other stuff
Takes
that
so
we were
long.
doing just takes so long, and it's so easy to botch it. Like it'll go vinegary too, like really fast.
I have to get like the recipe from you, man, because I think Hanaga is gonna love this.
Yeah, and it'll get, I pulled it off the heating mat last night and threw it outside to get it to kind of slow down that sparkling part. But if I left it on the mat like even a few more hours, it would have been even more sparkling.
Really?
Can I still drink my beverage with the mic here?
Of course you can. A delicious beverage it is. A homemade beverage.
Mm-hmm.
I'd expect nothing less from you.
With mushrooms in it.
Mm.
Don't forget about that part.
So what mushroom is then in there?
Ah, geez, the Latin is tricky. Fibrosis pinicola,
Okay.
or the pinicola group.
Yeah.
Common name though is the red-belted conch.
Yes. Okay. So it's the ones that you see often.
You
Growing out the sides.
probably saw me nab a couple of them yesterday.
Definitely. Yeah, I did. Okay, I'm just changing these levels a little bit. That seems better, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, I do. It's the little plump ones that you seem to like. You just like popping them off a small tree. Is it always dead trees that it's on, or it's growing off of other stuff?
I think dead or dying.
Okay.
Mostly pretty dead
Like
though.
unhealthy.
Yeah, they're just like on their way out basically.
So
They've already become food.
Yeah. Something's benefiting already.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Unless there's anything else, we can kick this thing off. Awesome.
Let's do it.
Welcome, dude. William Sprague, welcome to the podcast. I guess we should jump into that first. William is what you go by now, although you've actually been on this podcast a couple of times before, early on in the early days.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for having faith in me.
Mm-hmm. I knew you'd amount to something.
But you decided to make a change.
Yeah, so I guess between those last interviews and this, I turned 50.
Congrats.
Thank you. And I'm named after my father, grandfather, great-grandfather. I'm actually William Arthur Sprague IV. And none of those gentlemen are with us anymore.
Okay.
And so I just figured I would sort of reclaim the full title moving forward at 50. And I actually had the idea about a year ago to do that. And so I've been kind of looking forward to this like next phase of myself, because I kind of feel a bit different than I have in previous years. I kind of understand and know myself in this maybe more mature way that I hadn't in earlier years. So it just made sense to sort of reclaim the full title and go from there. Sounds pretty prestigious too.
It's also a great name.
It's a great name.
I would be rocking that name any chance I could.
I'm proud of it. It's nice that you don't meet too many people with the fourth after their title, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah. So I guess for people who don't know you, we should do a little setup. You are many things, but you've been on this podcast a couple of times before talking about mushrooms. You are a very passionate and successful, I would add, from personal experience, mushroom hunter. You forage. You do a bunch of stuff. I mean, you made this delicious beverage that we're drinking now, this ginger beer, not ginger ale. So yeah, you also kind of have like this different focus out in the woods, which I don't see in many other people. And you just kind of like observe a lot of different information, and that information tells you and guides you to where the mushrooms are. It's been a pretty epic. I mean, where are we now? We're kind of, I guess, halfway through the season.
Mm-hmm.
in terms of mushrooms.
Yeah, it feels about right. Yeah.
So
Depending on when most other people start.
That's
I
true.
started in August, I guess. So yeah, we're like getting into the winter mushrooms right now.
yeah, they're kind of kicking off now,
Mm-hmm.
which is fun, right? It's kind of fun to
Mhm.
be trying the different. I mean, for me, it's new. So each time the new wave of mushrooms is like a whole new bunch of learning and excitement. So it's also been like over a year since we recorded the last epi. So there's been a lot of like mushroom hunting, all kinds of stuff. I mean, we've been out a few times now chasing
Mhm.
different things. I
Yeah.
think we were chasing black trumpets, Smithy eye, which is a dye mushroom, an obscure dye mushroom, I will add, incredibly hard to find.
Yeah.
My eyes are not attuned to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then yesterday, we had a wicked time chasing Matsutake.
Yeah. That was a Matsutake mountain mission we went on yesterday.
I'm glad you call it that because that's what I named it in my head.
Did you? Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. We were pretty high up on those ridges and seemed like we were going up most of the day,
Oh, yeah.
but riding those ridge tops too, having really beautiful vistas and being able to look down across everything. It was quite nice to be out there with you.
Yeah, man.
Appreciated having you with. You learned. I can tell that you're just absorbing everything so fast, and just you're already. I knew you'd already be a natural when we first had our initial discussions, and I could tell how passionate you were about learning and picking up on the nuances, and maybe it's just adjusting nuances that you'd already been in tune with being a hunter out there for game and all that. I mean, we spent a lot of time on game trails yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, it's my happy place.
Mm-hmm.
It's good being on there. And in a way, I think you mentioned this in other episodes, but you said that mushrooms kind of like showing themselves, flagging, giving clues on trails where there's more heavy foot traffic because they want to be seen, right? If I remember correctly,
Yeah.
I think that's what you
Well,
said.
I think mushrooms do want to be found and seen and appreciated. But I think the game trail, I think it's like the pitter-patter
Yes.
of the hooves and paws stomping on the ground that might be sort of massaging that mycelium, stimulating it a little bit.
Yeah.
As I'll tend to see a lot of fruitings right off of both human trails and game trails. And depending on the mushroom, that could be a good thing for us or not. There's like, if it's obvious deer trail and say it's like porcini season, that, deer love porcini. So if it's popping up on their line of walk, they're probably going to get to it before you.
Yeah.
But that's okay too. I like seeing a decapitated bolete out there with some nice like teeth marks in it. Makes me feel good that they're getting them too and that they're enjoying them as much as they are.
It explains a few things because I've definitely seen a few headless porcini, which I think you're a bigger man than I.
You
I do have
pissed off.
moments where no, I don't get pissed off. There's like the sadness of like what could have been
Yeah.
if the timing was right. But that also reminds me, you told me a story a while ago, speaking of like missed opportunities with kings or porcini. You sent me a very funny message. I guess not funny. Funny's not the right word. An incredibly passionate message. You found a spot recently, but it was kind of surprising how early they'd popped there, right?
Yeah, for porcini, somewhat coastal, or definitely coastal spot. It was a property that a friend of mine was selling. He's a realtor up here. And it just looked like it would be good for porcini, so I asked him if I could check it out. And when I finally went over there, which was I think the next day, I was just like, I had my wife in the car. I'm like, I'm just gonna go in for a quick peek just to see what's going on, thinking I was, compared to most places on the coast right now, a bit early.
Yeah.
And I got in there and just started seeing porcini right away, and they were just huge and just blasted out is what I say. It's like they're just like so waterlogged and big and just done and wormed out. And I think I walked out of there with maybe like a half dozen or so, like pretty nice ones. But all in all, I stopped counting at a little over 40 mushrooms that were just spent and done. But what was interesting, I'm like, well, why did this spot pop early, and why are they like so just done, you know? And walking around that property, it seemed to have like really poor drainage, and it was pretty wet, like everywhere, a little bit boggy in spots, puddles, even like little, I don't know if I would call it a creek or a creek or a stream, but just almost like a foot like wide moving water going through different parts of the property. So I think combination of that and us just getting hammered with a bunch of rain over just a handful of days.
Yeah, it was like 10 inches.
Yeah. So it was just too much, but it really just plumped them out, and they just, you know, they were done. Those spores were just floating around everywhere.
Yeah.
So that was definitely disheartening to see, and kind of a bummer.
I think I might put that, if you don't mind, I might put a little bit of that recording, because it's so good. The energy that you have. You're just like, dude, I've just had the most amazing find.
Yeah.
I'll put that at the end.
It was, I guess, you know, it was a little bit of a bummer, but also like, okay, well, I was right. It did look, it was prime porcini ground after all. I just was there a little bit too late.
Timing was wrong.
Yeah.
And it's funny you saying that now, and I love listening to you talking about these things, because it's stuff in my mind, as you were saying before, in a very complimentary way, lad, so thank you. This little spot that I discovered this year near me, which had a lot of porcini, there were a few blasted out ones there, and thinking back to it now, the areas where they had popped way earlier was definitely the boggy areas where they were kind of like just kind of at the water level, or just getting a bit puddled out, and those kind of areas they hit there first. So that's definitely what I'm going to check first next year.
Yeah. So that's like getting into what I call microclimate hunting.
Yeah.
And that's where you can get into mushrooms that come a lot earlier than most of the other places around. So it's like remembering those kind of spots that there's a little extra something, or maybe it's less of something that's there, that's going to sort of be the ideal situation for early fruiting. And that kind of hunting is fun for me, because it's nice to pick stuff well before other people kind of think that it's out.
Yeah.
So you're eating porcini, like, or whatever mushroom it is, maybe weeks before people are like, oh, porcini are out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and then you've got like free reign for a while.
Yeah. You've got a little, just be quiet for a little bit.
Yeah. Don't post too many pictures. I was going to, I mean, it wasn't actually even on my list of things to talk about, but you made me think of it. Lobsters hit, as, I don't know if it's always normal, but they hit pretty early this year. It seemed to me like they were really popping. But you were telling me you found a lot of lobsters at some point. Tell me about that for a second, because I love lobsters and I love to hear about them.
Wow. Yeah. So lobsters aren't my favorite mushroom to eat. In fact, they're probably my least favorite. But they're one of my favorite mushrooms to hunt.
Yeah.
There's just something about like how proud they come out and how loud they are, and the contrast against the background in the forest. And then you also get all these like, you know, they're kind of like a Frankenstein mushroom, because it starts off as this one mushroom and then gets morphed by the hypomyces into this other mushroom. And so you'll get all these weird deformities, and
I love it.
Just really interesting shapes, and some will be huge, some will be small. I've seen what looks like a full-on lobster mushroom growing out of the top of another, well, I guess the same lobster mushroom.
Yes, yeah, it's like weird
sprouts
twin.
like another.
I've seen that too.
Yeah, there's just weird stuff that happens with that mushroom that makes almost every find just has a little bit more like wow factor in it compared to a lot of other mushrooms like black trumpets or whatever, that they all kind of just look the same for the most part.
It keeps you guessing.
Yeah, they just do. They have all these little surprises for you.
But like you were saying that, you made me think that, I think maybe that's why I like them so much, because they're like the weirdos of the woods, aren't they? Mm-hmm. They're just like bright colored, just doing weird stuff. They're super dense, so they sort of like, they pack a few pounds. They're heavy.
Definitely.
Yeah, they're good, man.
Yeah. No, this year was good for lobsters. I think I did most of my hunting for lobsters early on and north. So I want to say maybe August and September, I was north of us, like maybe around like Klamath area, closer to Oregon border. And they're all over the place. And I think we were talking coming out of the woods yesterday about, I was reminiscing about one of the heavier pack out days that I've had. And it was with lobster mushrooms with my big pack plus carrying stuff. And geez, it was a lot of weight. And then the biggest reason why I hunt that mushroom is so I can process them and sell and trade them as dye mushrooms. So it's a mushroom that pretty much every specimen I find is a keeper, no matter if it's past prime and nasty. In fact, those are the ones that are more cherished for the dye process because they give off more dye than ones that are like fresh and perfect.
And they turn like a deeper, more purple, red color as well, right?
Yeah, kind of a magenta.
Yeah.
So it's like everyone you find is like, grab it, you know.
And even those ones are even heavier, right? Because if they've soaked up all that water, or they've got like blasted out with, and they just probably weigh twice as much.
It's a heavy, girthy mushroom. Yeah. And it's mostly the outer part of that mushroom that has all the dye, but I've been experimenting with a lot of the specimens I find. I'll like leave on my back porch in crates. I won't process them right away, and I'll let that hypomyces really take advantage of the mushroom and turn more of it orange. And I'll even slice some of them in half, and where the inside body of the mushroom is white, when you slice them and expose that white inner part to the hypomyces that's already there on the outer parts of the mushroom, it'll start to attack that white part too.
And it becomes orange.
It turns orange too.
Wow.
Not as bright as the outer part of the mushroom, but still it turns it that color too. So it kind of turns in more of the mushroom into a viable product to use to dye.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's really a fun mushroom that way too, where you can just be patient with it after you harvest. You don't have to process it right away in fear of it like going bad or losing the mushroom because you're too slow at processing and drying. You could just let it sit out for a while and just let it get funky.
That's cool. I guess then I could also keep the outside for dye and eat the inside, and that way I'm getting a bit of you look horrified. Yeah.
Well, to me, actually, the tastier part of the mushroom is the outer colored part.
Yeah.
So the inside to me is just kind of pithy and more reminiscent of the original mushroom that it was, which is the Russula brevis.
Yeah.
It has that kind of Russula texture and consistency, and to me, lack of flavor and taste. So I guess you could do that if you wanted to, Robin, but
okay. Well, maybe I'll try it if I'm feeling
you're desperate,
if I really need that dye.
Yeah. But it is cool that mushroom comes out before a lot of other mushrooms and kind of gets you excited for the season and for everything else that comes after.
It does, yeah, and it is a great like kind of getting you fired up. You're right, getting excited for what's coming, and I mean, this is not a complaint. I've been lucky enough to kind of be over in the southern hemisphere, so I've missed a couple of mushroom seasons. It seems like I've not had the best timing. I've caught like the tail end of it or the beginning. So I've managed to. Lobsters have always been something that I've managed to get hold of because of timing. But this year I'm here and I'm absolutely loving it. I'm like in deep.
Nice.
Obsessed.
Yep, I've noticed that with you.
That's kind of half efforts are not really my thing. So in a kind of tenuous link to what we were going to talk more about today, coming back to kind of our hunt yesterday, which was awesome fun. Matsutake, I found them once before, and that was the first time I found them. But yesterday was real kind of like moment of what's the word? I don't know. What's the phrase when you just sort of do something and it's like not coming of age, but like there's another phrase, isn't it? It's like a baptism of fire, maybe. That's what I'm thinking of. It's because it was kind of probably nothing by your standards, but we got a couple of crates maybe. And also the things I love about Matsutake is it's kind of like a mushroom for all the senses. Like they are like really hard to see if you don't know exactly what you're looking for. You've got to really try and peek and find like a little flush of white somewhere, and they're often hiding under the duff. They are like squeaky, unlike a lot of other mushrooms. When you cut the stem, it's like got that squeaky sound. They have that distinct smell, which is like almost indescribable unless you've smelt it. I don't know, what does it smell like?
I mean, the guides describe it as like cinnamon red hots mixed with sweaty gym socks. I'm not sure I get the sweaty gym socks part.
Yeah.
But there is, in the same way that you would, sniff cinnamon, you kind of get this like burning sensation in your nostrils.
Yep.
But it's undescribable, really. There's nothing else that really smells just like it. It's very distinct, which is cool because it helps with the identification of that mushroom.
Yes, it does.
Because, we came across, there's so many different lookalikes out there for that mushroom. And if you're not experienced enough, or had somebody show you these differences, you can confuse what you may think that mushroom is with a lot of other things that are out there, which also makes it a little bit more challenging to hunt, because we saw lots of white decent sized mushrooms out there yesterday, and
even the one that the lobster takes over, right? Russula brevipies.
Yep, exactly. That
looks
was out there.
A fair bit like it.
Yep. Clitosabe nebulara, we saw a bunch of those out there, and even some waxy caps. But I think I saw you sort of getting better as we were going around, where I was spotting things from further out, and I could just tell instantly that's not a Matsutake. It looks like kind of the same color, but a lot of those lookalikes will be a more stark white.
Yes.
Or the Matsutake, when it pops out a little bit, it's like there's a certain dinginess to the top.
Yeah.
A little bit dirty as it comes out.
It's like a brownie kind of thing over the top.
Yeah, like with that white color.
It's almost like a nicotine stain or like a tea stain kind of something going on.
Yeah. It's like a dirt stain.
Yeah, it is.
And that, that soil that comes out is so like sandy and gritty, and it does have more of that nicotine kind of a color than coming out of like a rich, darker, humusy soil.
True. So there was another part of that hunt yesterday which entertained me. We went our separate ways for a little bit, and you kind of I found some mushrooms, I think, and was taking my time, and then I was coming back down the hill to where we had agreed that we were going to kind of meet in the area, and I got distracted and then tripped upon like an enormous mass, at least to me it was an enormous mass of Matsutake. I think I counted it was like 13 big matsutake. Some of them are really big, ranging from like tiny little peanuts from like that hadn't even grown out to like giant double-headed stuck together things. And that was just amazing to me. And I was like, first of all, documenting it. I'll put something on Instagram soon, I'm sure.
Nice.
But also just, yeah, taking some pictures and then just trying to clean the whole stuff. And I'm not that fast at cleaning yet, so I was a bit worried that you were going to be like, all right, we need to get on with this. We got a job to do. But you're like saying on the radio, like, oh no, dude, it's all good. I'm on a hill. I'm just enjoying the view. Later, you told me that you were microdosing. But I'm wondering how micro that dose was, because like later on in the day, you're like, I was actually pretty high on that hill. So that seems like a good segue for like our conversation today, which is about psychedelics.
Well, yeah. Well, like I remember when we split up, and I thought I think we kind of made the game plan to meet down on the main road. We spent most of the day just bushwhacking and off trail. And I knew that I thought you were right behind me, and then, 5 minutes goes by, 10 minutes goes by, I think 15 plus minutes go by, and you were quiet on our walkie-talkie channel. So I just figured you had gotten into some. Because usually that's how it goes. It'll just get dead silent for a while, and you don't hear anybody in the woods. I'm listening, and I'm not hearing you like prancing around up there or anything. So I had a pretty good feeling that you were getting into them. But yeah, I had already made it down to the main. It was like a logging road out there. I made it back down to, and then there was just this beautiful vista overlooking the valley down there. Some lobbed off tree stumps that just made the perfect little spot to sit down and slow down and just take in just the beauty that was there. At that part of the day, I think it was a little bit of sunshine was peeking through still before it got pretty overcast, but in the distance you can kind of see the storm, or not storm, but rain that we were expecting for later in the day. And yeah, I was sitting there, and I was feeling that microdose pretty good, which I took just before we left. And sometimes it takes half hour to an hour and change before I might feel it pretty good. But yeah, microdosing, we've talked a little bit about it, and microdosing for me it's kind of turned into one of the ways that I like to not only just be out in nature and be out in the woods, but also as sort of an aid for hunting and finding mushrooms, and just tuning into everything around me in this elevated level.
So what are you feeling then? How would you describe the sensation? Are you taking, in this instance, were you taking psilocybin, or were you taking Amanita muscaria?
Psilocybin.
Okay.
Yeah. Different mushroom. The quote-unquote magic mushrooms.
Yeah, okay.
So, I guess microdosing is like anywhere in the 0.5 to, I want to say 0.35 or 0.4 of a gram. And the capsule that I took, that we make and that I usually imbibe with, are 0.25 gram. So quarter gram. So it's kind of like right in the middle. But depending on what strains you're working with, are different potencies too. So, maybe a golden teacher would be less potent than Melmac or something like that. And I guess before we dive too deep in this too, I should say that I don't recommend microdosing and going into the woods for everybody. Like I I think that you need to be pretty good at maneuvering in the woods and not getting turned around and being prepared with, all the things that we need to be prepared when we go into the woods by ourselves or with another person. But for me, I've just slowly started to do it more and more, and now it's almost just like part of my practice. And it really does just hone me in on everything right away, where before, or not on a microdose, I would really have to check myself to slow down and take certain things in and remember to breathe and not be in a rush to cover ground or find bounty and all that kind of stuff. And so it's really helped me to slow down and be more aware, which are things that you may not associate with microdosing out there. You might think it would distract you from what you're doing and maybe get you turned around. And for different people, it might do that. But for me, it just helps me hone my skills and really take in everything that's around, bird sounds and just reading the land better. And I swear it's helped my hunting skills, and it's just made it for me to have an even more enjoyable experience out in the woods, which I didn't really think was possible. But it's definitely shaped things in that direction for me.
I did notice there were definitely a few moments, and it's also moments that I try to embrace as well, when you're hyper-focused and really enjoying the process of looking for mushrooms and the world around you and understanding everything in a kind of technical way. Also taking those moments when you are break into an opening and there's a beautiful stream winding its way, tiny little stream winding its way through the little clearing in front of you amongst some giant old trees. There were moments that I became aware that you were kind of just taking a moment to really soak that in, soak it all up and just be even more grateful and in the moment than maybe you would have been before. Is that, that's the impression I got. Is that kind of what you were feeling?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of maybe some parts of the day where I was vocal about that.
Yeah.
I do remember when we were kind of heading back out, there was this one part where we were walking along this creek, and I just saw in my mind's eye a mountain lion walking up this path that was pretty game traily, and I just saw it there, and it just looked so beautiful contrasted against the dark, more of a redwood canopied part of the forest with the water right there for it to drink from. And I just saw it happen. And I think I said to you, doesn't this look like a spot where a lion would just come right through this line here?
Yep.
And I think you agreed and said that one of your mountain lion experiences out in nature looked like a very similar scenario that we were in. So it's stuff like that too, it's stuff that quote unquote isn't there in front of you, but you still pick up on that vibration that had happened there. And there's no way for me to guarantee that scene took place there, but for some reason it just really imprinted into my mind as we were walking through, and it just felt so like a natural thing to happen in that spot.
Oh, definitely. And it really did, super intuitive kind of moment of just understanding this is, and mountain lions have an enormous range, so they move quite big distances, but I bet you I would put money on that being one of the highways
It felt
for
like
a cat
it.
going through there. Yeah. Okay, so it makes sense then, like just a greater presence, patience, and ability to kind of take in the moment and click into that zone quicker. It's funny because two guys who I've had in separate episodes, Joel and Cole, I think I might have mentioned this in a previous episode we talked about, but they actually microdose while hunting elk because they have the same experience of awareness and getting zoned in to like what's going on in the world. And it's interesting. There's like I know it's different quarry.
Yes.
But like a similar kind of increase in presence and awareness and slowing down. It's like brings you back to the speed that you should be when you're in nature.
Definitely. And heightened level of gratefulness too.
Yeah.
For just all of it. Even if it's not finding any mushrooms. If you can go out there and just have a beautiful day, no matter what, then it's always going to be a win-win. So it just feels really good for me to do it because I have a lot of experience with psychedelics, with mushrooms in general, and I've been using them as, quote unquote tools or ways to enhance certain aspects of my life that I want them to enhance, more so in the realm of like music making and art making. And so it just seems like it was sort of a natural progression for me to apply it towards another thing that I love to do so much. But I think maybe initially a little trepidation about like, well, do I want to be slightly high in the woods? And, sometimes I will microdose, hit the woods, hunt, have a great day, feel really good about everything. And then when I come out or later that day, I'm like, oh, I didn't even really quote unquote feel that dose while I was out there. And then sometimes I'll be out there in the middle of a chanterelle patch picking and just be like, oh damn, like I'm actually pretty high right now. And so I don't know, I'll just be aware of that part too, just like, oh, you're high, slow things down, take it easy. Of course, like don't freak out or anything like that, but on such a small amount, and with all my experience, I don't. But it's interesting how sometimes it will hit you, and it's the same dosage I'm taking and the same strain I'm taking each time.
Yeah.
But sometimes, there's so many factors that play into what you'll feel off of a microdose or a small dose, like when the last time you ate, what you ate, even water amounts in your body, how hard you're working in the field. Like, are you going up, steep inclines, or are you just kind of like slowly moseying along flats? So, and your own body weight, things like that. But mostly I think it's like the diet and when the last time you ate and drank was, that has like the biggest effect on how much you're actually feeling it. But part of microdosing too is not necessarily feeling that high. It's more of what the mushroom is doing and working on you in general. So you may not feel that sense of like being high, but it doesn't mean that it's not doing something for you. And it might be more on like a subconscious level where you're not even really thinking about what it might be doing for you in that moment. But then maybe later you'll reflect that, oh, I just had such a beautiful day and nothing was bothering me. I wasn't thinking about anything else. And it sort of solidifies these experiences that just feel really good to us in the day-to-day, but maybe slightly enhanced. that makes sense.
Yeah. Which I think there's a lot of other things people do. It's kind of maybe more of a, well, no, it's an ancient thing, but like mindfulness, meditation, there's all these things that people are doing in order to try and bring that in, right? And bring you more into the moment and enjoy the experience and kind of lower anxiety and all that stuff too. So yeah, it feels like it's all kind of connected, mind and body. I wonder, you were saying sometimes you're feeling that more, some days not, some days yes. Is it like a physical sensation that you're feeling as well as, because you've described emotional and kind of mental changes in your kind of like perception of the world around you. But do you feel anything physically as well?
Yes. Yep. Certain strains are sort of noted to give you a little bit more of like a body buzz, sort of.
Okay.
Sometimes it's more mental and heart opening, ideas, gratefulness, things like that are pretty commonplace. But yeah, sometimes it will be like on a physical level too, almost a little energizing, and makes me feel like I can do a little bit more, go a little bit further.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that you would say that. Sort of like a very mild stimulant kind of nature to it.
Yeah, and it could be somewhat psychological too, where you're just feeling so good doing what you're doing that you just want it to be prolonged in some way.
Yeah.
So you're maybe pushing yourself a little bit further.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And maybe, I think going back to when you may have noticed that I was a little bit high and I was like down there doing my thing. I remember when we did split up, I was sort of like thinking, I'm kind of done with this area. And there was this whole other area that I wanted to go look at with you that day.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was sort of like, just ready to move on. And I was thinking about this when I was down at the bottom of the hill, when I was like joking with you, like, hey, are you doing another podcast up there right now? What's going on? Like, it's been a while.
Yeah.
But, when I got off the line with you, I thought, wow, that's so great that you decided to not just follow me off that ridge and get down and go to the other spot, that you wanted to trust your own instincts a little bit more and follow your nose into a new direction, and it paid off for you. And had I stayed up there a little bit more, not thrown the towel in as early as I did, even though I think we gave it just time and coverage to that area, it just goes to show you that slowing down and going a little bit further can be fruitful. So it was a nice lesson for me to be like, I was like a little too eager to change directions and mode into a different area, and to have you there contrasting what I was feeling and thinking and being successful in the direction that you went, and solidifying what I had already thought, that zone was probably going to be decent. It was just proof to me that slowing down and being even more observant can pay off in this particular way that it did for you. And you ended up having probably, your first initial really great experience with that mushroom there.
Yeah.
And if I had pulled you down from that, and saying, come on, let's, stick with me, let's go this way, you wouldn't have had that experience, and you wouldn't have had it by yourself, which I think is really special too. It's nice to share those kind of finds with somebody but also when you're just by yourself and you're just reveling in it without any distractions from anybody else is another feeling in its own. So I think it all worked out perfectly. I had my time on that ridge top looking over the valley, and having the fog roll in was just perfect for me for what I needed. But I guess what I'm saying is I really appreciated that you did your own thing and you were rewarded for it. And it looked beautiful from my perspective to see that for you too.
Yeah, I'll admit it was an awesome moment. There's just something amazing. Whatever you're hunting, be it animals. I mean, like the elk that I saw in Colorado, that first big steaming bull that came in, like a 600, 700 pound animal. There's just some kind of thing with that first like big moment that you have with something that you're looking for. It like imprints on you in a way. And the thing was, like, you were right about that area. Like, there weren't many matsutake there. It was just lucky that I went up that different trail and just cut up over the hill and down that different way, that I found that freak kind of giant big brain mass of like 13 matsutakes all stuck together like a giant, I don't know, cauliflower kind of weird thing that I'd never seen before. But you tell me that's kind of a bit more common. I thought it was like the most magnificent thing that I'd ever seen.
I'm sure it was. Yeah, we all have our different experiences of what we think is common and not common. So it's interesting to note how these fruitings take place and what they look like. But, you know, I'd seen that spot, I think, the previous season out of matsutake season, and it was a lot drier and not much happening in there at all, but just based on the soil and elevation and what trees and stuff were there, I thought it could be good. And, you know, if you remember when we first rolled up on that area, we were kind of sizing it up from below on the road. And I was like, right up through there looks really good.
Yep.
And you said something similar to a spot on the left. And we decided that I would go the spot that was calling me and you would go to the spot that was calling you.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, we want to look for some skid roads up there, some older roads, because most of the way up there were roads that were more recent, where any mycelium would have been really disturbed or not had taken its hold on that zone. So fruitings would be less likely. So let's get up there. Let's try and get onto an older skid road and see if anything are popping on or off these roads. Well, as soon as we got up to the spot that we saw from the ground and dropped down to a proper older skid road, there were mushrooms right there.
It was like, we just like literally right there, wasn't it?
Yeah. But we kind of wrote the scenario before we even saw it.
Yeah.
But then we didn't really find anything for like a little bit, which is also something that's quite common with mushroom hunting. I think it's like you'll see a spot or a zone that looks really good. You'll get in there and instantly, like, bam, you'll find them. And you're like, oh, yeah, like, okay, it's like it's on.
Yeah.
And then you get up from that spot and start wandering, and it's just like nothing. It's like, I don't know. It's like they're like dangling. They're like teasing you
it's a tease,
in this way. Yeah, interesting how that happens so often, though.
It is, yeah. I mean, it was definitely what happened yesterday. That's for sure. So, I guess if it's okay, I could ask like a few more practical questions about psilocybin. I mean, we talked before about microdosing, and I've got a note here saying like hero dosing versus microdosing. You said something to me, apologies if this is private, I don't know, maybe a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago when we were hunting together. You were saying that you're feeling like pretty tired. You've been like hunting a lot of days in a row, and you were thinking about you need to put aside some time to take a heroic dose, to kind of, I think you said like blow away the cobwebs, or maybe that's my my expression. It doesn't sound like something that you would say necessarily, but that kind of...
Yeah, a rinse, I think.
I think you said a rinse.
I like to say that usually.
So talk me through that, and what I don't even know where to begin.
Like sort of the differences between the two for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been dabbling with different dosages going back to like the mid 90s probably.
Wow. Okay.
And on a fairly regular basis from that time period, I've definitely gone through stints where, maybe I haven't taken a larger dose for like a year or a year and change. But I would say for the last at least 10 years, it's been a bit more frequent than that. And then the last few to handful of years, it's been a lot more frequent than that. I would say, like my wife and I were getting into it there for almost 2 years of like every full and new moon. So almost like twice a month.
Yeah.
And there's different dosages, different doses and different strains play into the kind of experience you're going to have, as does the mindset and setting that you're in. And I've been lucky enough over the last handful of years where I have like a pretty like stress-free life, and it's mostly self-directed. So I'm not really working for anybody else. I'm not punching a time card for anybody else. I don't live in like a busy, bustling city with a lot of those kind of stresses attached. So this part of my life, this part of my journey, I feel like quite balanced and quite grounded as like a base for me to explore pretty much everything in life that I want to explore, whether it's art, music, friendships, nature, psychedelics, etc. So I feel like this part of my life is like I'm very grateful for the position that I'm in, and I think it has a big effect on the outcomes of some of these journeys that I go on, because I am coming from such a balanced spot. Yeah. And I realize that not everybody has that. And even just like, the Monday through Friday 9-to-5ers wanting to have a breakthrough, a quote unquote rinse with mushrooms or psychedelics, it's still hard, even if you take the Monday off, to fit that in. Maybe you're a family person, there's kiddos involved, other responsibilities. It's hard to step away from the day to day to give yourself the space and time that you deserve, and that the medicine you're about to work with deserves, for you to have the experience that is most beneficial to you and the ones around you. So coming from that space, for me, it kind of has helped me leaps and bounds get right into the work that I want to do with this medicine. And different strains, different potencies, different amounts, they all play into the experience, along with the mindset and setting that we were just talking about. And so based on all those things, usually I'm in, for a while it was, just sort of like a pop in, pop out, maybe 2.5 grams was pretty common for a while. And for those folks that don't really know like what a bigger dose is. I would say, you know, I've had epic healing on a 0.5 gram before, where I had a really big breakthrough with something that not an issue, but something that I didn't realize was there, that got brought to the surface for me to see and understand better and process. So a really big healing off of 0.5 gram. So again, with the microdosing being like around 0.4 and under, 0.4 of a gram and under, anything over like a 0.5 gram, you can have a substantial experience with. So if you're at 2 and change, you're going to have, you know, that's a pretty good dose, but you can also maybe, depending on what you're into, I'm not so into like taking mushrooms and going to concerts or being around a bunch of people and stuff like that. I used to do a little of that in my 20s, but not at all anymore.
Yeah.
So nowadays, then I was at like 3 and change for a while. And now I'm like in the 4+ gram for the larger doses. And that seems to be like a really nice, around at 3, I was finding at 3 and change, it was a bit of work. The process was like a bit of work.
In what way do you mean?
In ways of like navigating certain things that may come up, whether I want to focus on that thing and dive into it, or if it seems like more of maybe a distraction, and something that I'm not really setting this time aside to explore that particular topic or issue or thing. And at a little bit more, at around like 4 and change, I was finding that it was a bit easier for me to flow in and out of things that I did want to focus on, that I did want to work on, that I did want the mushrooms to help give me guidance and direction towards. Yeah, so, and, you know, a lot of people will go a lot bigger than that. You know, I think heroic doses are, you know, probably would be 5 to 6 grams and up. And I know people that eat a lot, like even more than that. But I think I just found a spot where I found, wow, I got so much out of that experience beyond anything that I was bargaining for me at like, say, 4 and change. Why would I even go to 5 or 6 or 7?
Yeah.
Because it is a lot of work, physically and especially mentally, to be able to process these things that are coming in, these different ideas and approaches and things that the mushrooms are trying to. And, you know, a lot of time for me going into these sessions, I try to make myself like a blank canvas and really ask the mushrooms to show me what they think I need to see and feel and understand and go through. A lot of people will go into these sort of ceremonies very intent on dealing with one specific thing, and it's great to ask for that kind of stuff. It's nice to have an intention going in, but I've found more and more that is more of a way to sort of ground the person going into the experience than it really plays out to answer those things for people, at least just for me. So I kind of keep it open-ended and let the mushrooms sort of guide me in that way and what I need to understand and see and experience.
It's like subconscious as well. That do the work. I feel like it makes sense if you have set goals, and in a way this is kind of the same for life, isn't it? If you're quite rigid with the goals that you want to achieve, you're never going to know all of the things. No one can compute what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you have very rigid ideas about how you are going to have a happy existence, be it in life or be it in a heroic dose, that's going to create conflict. It feels like if things don't go how you imagine they were going to go, then that could easily create like a conflict situation. I'm speaking from a hypothetical point of view here. So if something feels wrong, by all means, jump in. But does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that feels right. And even the things that we're trying to manifest or things that we want to happen, it always looks different than what we think. And so if we are placing that rigidity upon what we want the outcome to be, most of the time that sort of mindset, it just distorts, and it makes it so it doesn't roll out the way that you want it to.
Yeah.
It's really hard to get the universe to play out exactly the way that you want. So you have to be open for it to look all these different ways, for it to come to you in just ways that you never would have thought. If you're open to that, then there's all these points of entry that these things can manifest themselves and come to you, and make it just a higher probability for it to actually happen.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to happen in that one rigid way that you saw it. So just be open.
Yeah.
And the mushrooms, they're more intelligent than we are, and definitely more intelligent than we give them credit for. They'll get in there and all these little nooks and crannies and expose things that need to be addressed, or need some light shed on them so you can be actually aware of what that might be. It's so deep, man. There's so many levels and so many things that can happen, and so many epiphanies and so many life changing directions that they can show you that are all beneficial. It's all like positive, and it's really rooted in love too. And I think the deeper your connection with fungi and mushrooms, so most of the mushrooms that I'm hunting and looking for and buying, selling, trading, they're not of the psychedelic side of things, but just being in communion with them in all these different ways. And I probably eat culinary mushrooms like every day. And so having all these different experiences, the hunt of them, the collection, the drying, the processing of these mushrooms, the different ways to appreciate them on culinary levels, gifting mushrooms, trading mushrooms, all this, it's just this woven interplay between myself and fungi. And so when I do introduce the psychoactive fungi into the mix, it's almost like I feel when they're in me and in my system, I feel like, it might sound weird to say, but it's almost like they feel more at home with me. They're like, oh, this is like, this guy like gets us, this guy's like one of us. And it feels like they cut to the point faster for me. There's not so much pampering or certain side steps And maybe it's because I've been working with them on the psychoactive level for a while too.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's this bond, this connection, this interplay that go with fungi that is deeper than just the psychoactive element of the experience. It's all the experiences. It's the hunting and gathering and gifting, trading. All those things play in to the experience I have with them on the psychoactive level.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'll be honest. When we had our first kind of in-depth conversation about mushrooms maybe a year and a half ago, and I think you were maybe one of the first people that I spoke to who referred to mushrooms as kind of like beings, or like a kind of a collective being with mycelium, perhaps. I don't know. It's a complex thing. I think I was a little surprised to hear that. And it's interesting, I guess my perception has changed quite a lot in the last year and a half of nature, mushrooms, mycelium, the network. And I guess I've learned a bunch of things through the conversations I've had with people as well. And maybe that's changed the way I perceive things, to be more open to sort of ideas that maybe aren't as mainstream, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess what I've learned is that there's so much that we don't know, right? And that mycelium is this enormously powerful thing everywhere under the ground, interconnecting so many different species of mushrooms and trees and plants and all, it's this amazing network. It's kind of like the original internet, maybe. I don't know. It's probably a bad analogy. But yeah, it's also the fact that mushrooms are some of like the first creatures on Earth as well, apparently. This is a theory I heard the other day, which I thought was really interesting, is that all the soil in the world, before that, it was just kind of a lava field, a bunch of kind of tectonic plates, and very unstable, the Earth, a lot of rock and magma that was then cooling to be stone. And soil is the product of animals that have lived and then died, or creatures. So it's mushrooms, animals, plants, all those things. But the first things on Earth were mushrooms, supposedly. This is something I heard, which I thought was really interesting. So they are far longer in existence than we ever were. So although it might be like you look at a mushroom and think, oh, that's not a very evolved thing, it's been doing its thing for a whole lot longer than us.
Yeah, even going back before, mushrooms as, fruiting bodies of mycelium, really what was starting that process that you're talking about were things like slime molds and lichen.
Yes.
Where they're actually, breaking down rocks and, the lava, anything porous, and plant material and all that, like the soil, everything in our backyard, that's everything that this house is built on. It's like under that is all dirt and soil, which was, living organic matter in some way that got broke down. So if mushrooms weren't, if the mycelium system wasn't breaking down all this stuff, there would be just piles of trees and branches and stone and just all this stuff just everywhere. We wouldn't even be able to navigate our world, let alone have other animals and creatures navigate it and be successful and hunting and foraging the things that they need, because it would just be a complete mess. Like we would be doomed.
It's true.
We wouldn't really be here. But yeah, some of the earlier mushrooms, they found fossilized fungus and that were just like as large as trees.
Yeah, I saw that. Just
like massive. But yeah, before that, it was like the lichens and slime molds and stuff that were really doing the work and paving, really paving the, building the soil that the mycelium could then start threading through, and then turning fruiting bodies from that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go back to those trees for a second.
Yeah.
Excuse me. The fizzy bubbles are getting me. Sorry, everyone, if you heard that.
That's good work.
But yeah, I saw it. It's like some of them are like 10 plus feet high, right? Like, and for a while, people were finding these fossils, so these kind of big width, like 24 inch across fossils that they thought were trees, fossilized trees. But actually, it took a long time for them to realize, no, these were mushrooms. Back in the day, in the glory day of the mushroom era,
Right.
those things were like 15, 20 foot high or whatever,
Yeah.
giant, thick tree like mushrooms. Can you imagine what that world would have looked like?
I can't. But yeah, they're just, the conditions must have been just perfect for what they were up to and what they needed, and not maybe as much competition.
Yeah.
So they were just able to thrive in these certain ways.
It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a story that I would love you to share. I did a bit of research before because we've had so many chats separately without the podcast. It's hard to remember what stories are in the podcasts, what aren't.
Yeah,
You
it
told
gets
me
a little blurred.
It does, yeah. You've used the expression, I think you maybe even used it in this recording, taking mushrooms to find mushrooms. Well, you told me a really good story about a time that you were looking for morels. At a time when morels were not really popping for anyone. Like the community of people who are over, I'm guessing you're in the Sierras maybe. I'm not sure where you were. But maybe people don't need to know that. Whoops.
Yeah, we're talking morels here, so we got to be... Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think I know. I do know this.
Which I would say I called it the guiding lights. Does that make sense?
That's a good title for it, yeah. So this would have been, I guess, what would be considered the Cascades, because this is up in Shasta.
Okay.
And this was, let's see, I think I was 2 or 3 years into hunting mushrooms and just like really into it. But I had never really cut my teeth on the whole morel thing, because that's a different zone. You've got to travel different trees, different scenario, just totally different environment than here in the coast of Mendocino.
It's like Burns as well, isn't it? Something.
Yeah.
I've never gone, but.
Burn hunting.
Okay.
Up in Shasta, there's definitely areas that have burned and produced, but I guess we're talking more what is commonly called naturals. So they're morels that are just they're not associated with burns. They're just associated with different tree species that are there.
Okay.
And so, yeah, this was my first go at trying to hunt morels based on really just some question and answers from a couple of veterans that were in the Mendocino Coast Mushroom Club, which started in 2016, and that's the season 16-17 that I got really into mushrooms. And so I would go to these meetings, and at that point it was just like a handful of us around a table. But there were some really knowledgeable folks there, and one gentleman in particular, Eric, who had a lot of experience with morels under his belt, and he was actually a buyer up in the Shasta area. So he would buy in the springtime.
This is Eric Schramm.
Yep.
Okay.
Mendocino mushrooms.
Yeah.
So he would buy, he would be buying porcini, Rex Verus, and morels that were popping up in that area. And so he gave me some pointers in some of the meetings, and finally was just like, you should come on up this season and hunt morels and poke around and blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, yeah, that sounds like great fun. I'll give it a go. It's a little bit out of my already established comfort zone here and what I've learned, and seemed like a good opportunity to learn. So just me and my dog, Alva, on that trip. And there's a lot of national forest up there, so I just figured I would just set up camp somewhere in the woods and just kind of wing it. So I got up there early and did a lot of poking around, and I knew, what trees to look for and sort of settings and stuff like that, and poked around quite a bit and just really wasn't finding that much. I think that morning day, maybe I had found like 5 morels or something like that. And even just those was really tricky, because if you don't, you really have to train your eye on that mushroom. You could literally be in a field of hundreds and just standing in the middle of them and not see them and not know that they were there. So it was just beautiful to be in the shadows of Shasta, and just the air and sky and vibration and forest up there is just beautiful and magical, and quite the experience itself. In fact, maybe even a little distracting to the task at hand. It's so majestic. And so that night I made camp, found a sweet little spot off this creek, built a little fire, made some dinner, and was just kind of like hanging out in that sort of setting. And I decided, I think I want to eat I ate probably around 2 grams or something like that. I still had to be aware of my surroundings and being in a new spot and responsible for my dog and stuff, but there's nobody around really. It's just me and nature. And so I ate some mushrooms and just kind of hung out by the fire. Eventually got into my tent and was just kind of laying there, and they're kicking in. And at some point I felt my body or my mind, my soul, whatever, just raise up above, maybe a few hundred feet above where I was. And I was just kind of looking down at the topo and the area that I was way above the trees. And I noticed that there were these bluish purple, little lit up dots here and there on the ground. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty interesting. What's going on there? And then the mushrooms were kind of just duh, what do you think is going on here? We're trying to show you something, And I was like, no way. Are they highlighting where the mushrooms are? And it was just ding, ding, ding. Yeah, And so in the zone, I could see the zone that I was in, and not being that successful at finding morels, I could see that they were here and there. But what I really saw was this area that was I guess it would be southeast of where I was located. I saw a real high concentration of these lights on the ground in that area. And I was like, wow, well, if this is really what's happening here, and they're showing me where the morels are, then I need to take a look at this area in the morning. And so, I just had a beautiful evening, beautiful night, just perfect temperatures, awesome camping circumstances, and ended up So at this time, this is like before I had like Onyx Hunt and, tracking apps and stuff on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
But I did have I bought a map at the ranger station when I first rolled into town of the national forest there. And so I busted out the map over coffee and breakfast, and I could see that there were like 2 roads that I could take that would basically drop me off into the area that I saw the concentration of lights. And so that's what my objective was that next day. Got over into that general vicinity and just got out and started hiking around, and just like, oh man, there were morels everywhere. And I was just like, no way. It was like, disbelief, but also just like it totally made sense. And I think you've met Elva before. He's a blue heeler cattle dog with just tons of energy and just like down to go and go and go.
Yeah.
And I was hunting in this zone just nonstop for hours, and I would just basically fill my rucksack with morels, go back to my car, dump them in crates, go back out, fill my pack, just repeat. And eventually my dog was just like, he was just like over it. And I think the last haul that I went out for, I just put him in the car and just had him just chill in the car and wait for me because he was just kind of over it. But yeah, it was just really just a beautiful experience to have that was like quite unexpected. And I just can't chalk it up to anything else than what it seemed to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, just a beautiful experience. And I have tried to sort of replicate that experience by taking mushrooms while camping before to see if I would get that kind of a bonus, but it's never quite happened. But I'm just thankful that it happened that one time, and that I recognized it for what it was and was able to get that beautiful bounty that my first time ever hunting morels.
Yeah. Did you tell Eric about it?
That's a good question. I don't think that I did. But I remember, the buy station where he was buying. I was really into the Golden State Warriors that year, and they were doing really well. And so I kind of hated being taken out of the mindset of being in nature, but I also really wanted to watch these like playoff games that were like at the little pizzeria and brewery that was right next to his buy station. So I definitely was like checking in with him like every maybe couple days. I think I was there for 4 or 5 days, 5 days max. You really can't hang out with morels without proper refrigeration that long. But
Okay.
since he had a buy station, he had a what are they called? They're called reefers. It's basically just like a giant portable walk-in cooler.
Oh, brilliant.
So he said that I could stash my mushrooms there in his cooler while I was up there hunting around. So I think that gave me like an extra day or so to be up there with him. But I think he was kind of like, not bad for your first time at this, and I don't think it was even really a great season for morels that year.
That's what you told me before.
And I don't even remember coming across very many people out in those woods, and now it's just like it's crazy, since COVID, during COVID, and since a lot of those grounds are really picked over, and you'll come across people out there, even like pretty deep in the woods. I've met people that I know like out in those woods before.
Funny.
It's just like weird. Kind of expected some random strangers, but coming across people out there,
Yeah.
it's kind of weird.
It's kind of like mixed. I have mixed feelings about that in a way. because
Yeah.
it's happening a lot for, I think, a lot of the different outdoor activities and wild, kind of connecting with the wild sort of experiences that people are having. I mean, like, I can't talk, like, we have this podcast, we're talking on a podcast that I started in the last year. It's only the last 5-6 years that I've got really deep into this connecting with nature kind of experience. So I'm definitely guilty as charged. But I guess in a way, it feels like such a positive thing for people to be having as an experience in general. There's a bit of that balance, isn't there? Like your own experience, maybe giving up some of that so that other people can also start to connect with nature better. I mean, I'm sure it's to a point, but it feels like a bit of a worthy sacrifice.
I think so.
Okay, folks, that's another great episode done and dusted, brushed off with a perfect lone wolf mushroom knife, and placed in the paper baggie. A bit of product placement there. If you made it this far into the episode, then thank you, first of all, and then an extra thank you if you could show your appreciation with a quick follow and or a 5-star review. It always helps and gets the podcast out there with the algorithmy things and make sure that more people see it than ever before. As I said before, there is another psychedelic episode in the pipeline. In fact, there's actually a couple. Next week, or I'd say in a couple of weeks, we're going to be speaking to Eugenia Bone, who is a big mushroom lover and actually an author who's written multiple books about mushrooms. The one that we're going to look at a bit more in this episode is her specific experiences and all the research she's done around taking magic mushrooms. Once again, a big thank you to William. Be sure to give him a follow on Facebook and Instagram and all the places he likes to go. Definitely check out his store, which is... completely forgotten the name of the store now. Make sure you check out his store, which is called Born Free Natural Mystic. I'm going to put a link down in the show notes to everything. Also check out his amazing mushroom knife. His Lone Wolf mushroom knife is something I'm now the proud owner of. I'm looking forward to putting it through its paces in South Africa when I'm over there. I've been told reliably, no pressure, that the Chicken of the Woods is popping off any second now. So I'm excited about that. Thanks everyone for listening. And until next time, which actually I guess will be in South Africa. Until then.
Oh my God, I saw a spot today over by me, and now it's for sale by somebody I know. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go check it out. Alva and Valentine just waited in the car for me, and I ran in there, and holy shit, man, it is such porcini heaven. And I never wanted to cry so bad over mushrooms before in my life. I probably, actually, that's not true. There's been a couple other times. But I stopped counting at somewhere around 50 porcini, but they were all just like big and blasted out, like huge, like dinner plate size porcini. But just the perfect grounds for them, man. I don't know how much this property is, but damn, do I wish I had the money to buy it, because it was some of the nicest porcini hunting ground I have ever seen up here in Mendocino. And obviously a heavy producer. They were just fucking everywhere. I think I walked out of there with like 5 or 6. But easily saw 45, 50. God, such a bummer.
Welcome to the Wild Dispatch!